company. We have a faculty member who has a non-federal award. And to meet the obligations of that award, she needs to procure materials that are not readily available in the area. Coincidentally, the same faculty member owns a private company that manufactures necessary materials. The faculty member has disclosed her ownership interest in the company and has requested that a procurement place an order with the company. So, gentlemen, how would you approach this situation?
One of the things you need to do as soon as a conflict is potentially identified, a potential conflict, is to create an arm's length arrangement. To the person with the conflict needs to step back at that point. And a good example in this one is, to begin with, the faculty member really shouldn't make the determination of whether this is a sole source arrangement or not. That's really up to their procurement office. As soon as they realize what they really should be doing is saying, I need to buy X, give it to the procurement office.
The disclosure came in, and there was a plan, let's say, to actually have a purchase with that company. Then you'd have some sort of a management plan in place to help to mitigate that conflict. I'm trying to envision what elements of that plan may be. What things perhaps would you keep the PI out of for that particular transaction?
Well, you wouldn't want them involved in, first of all, determining that this was the only source. Secondly, if you determined it was the only source, in justification of the price, negotiating of any contract, the faculty member would need to be completely independent of that. And again, this would need to be well documented as you go through that. So they need to, at this point, saying, I need a widget, and go away. Let the purchasing office go through the normal process that they would with anything else to procure this. If they end up with this person's company on an independent track, because it's the only place you can actually buy this, then you just disclose all that, document all that, but let that be independent of the faculty member. Let's say we have a faculty member owns shares in a company. Well, that's a whole different arrangement. And so when you look at the ownership, you can't just say, oh, they have some interest in that company, we have a conflict. Well, if they own shares in Grainger Corporation and we buy something from Grainger and they're just one of thousands and thousands and thousands of shareholders and have no influence on management of Grainger, then there's absolutely no conflict there. So you've got to look at that relationship in depth to see whether the control, whether truly is a conflict. You can't just assume by what's, the initial review of the arrangement that there is a conflict.
Once a management plan is put in place, it doesn't stop there. There's an ongoing obligation for due diligence to maintain lines of communication with the faculty member in these circumstances, particularly to bring to their attention the importance of identifying any change in their relationship with the organization or the outside entity, because those changes, as you indicated, facts, context matters, and I think that's probably a theme that will run throughout the conversations this morning.
That the RF's policy that talks about gifts and the receipt of gifts from third parties applies to central office employees and specifically states that RF employees at SUNY locations need to follow the local rule. And this was to do two things. One is to get some parity with Section 73 of the Public Officers Law, and also as an acknowledgement that some campuses and locations within campuses, even such as medical schools, have a zero tolerance policy for acceptance of gifts.
The framework, to start with, the framework for evaluating the appropriateness of a gift in any context that we're talking about here will depend largely on three elements: the identity of the donor, the value of the gift that's offered, and the circumstances under which it's offered. On its face, this particular scenario in the exchange of gifts raises some concerns to me in the first instance. Almost in no circumstances is it appropriate for either an RF employee or a university employee to accept a gift from an individual who is regularly doing business with the institution. Now, if we break this down and say, okay, what's the identity? Well, they regularly do business, but is there any other underlying personal relationship between them? Maybe it was a birthday gift, and they've known each other for 42 years, and on every day for the last 25 years, on this individual's birthday, they get a gift. The fact that there is an underlying business relationship is something to note, but at least under the provisions of the Public Officers Law, there are exemptions from the definition of gift for those gifts that are given in ordinary, customary circumstances when there's an underlying personal relationship. In that context, you look at the circumstances of the gift. What was the underlying purpose to be served? Was it a personal purpose to be served, or was it an underlying professional or business purpose?